seat, please. Of the Standing Finance Committee will resume.
Good morning, Madam.
We have
Madam
had...
Chair, that's why.
Sure.
No, sorry, I was just informing you that the Minister of Public Utilities is on his way back to the seat.
Okay, so Head 39, Ministry of Public Utilities. Head 39, Ministry of Public Utilities, $2,791,253,400. I will now invite the Minister of Public Utilities to make a brief opening statement, not exceeding 5 minutes. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. As always, it is indeed an honor to address the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament this morning. Since being appointed the Minister of Public Utilities just over 2 years ago, I have set my hands, as you could say, on the wheel and attempting to transform the public utility service that falls under my purview. As our mission statement clearly states, our mandate is to facilitate the effective delivery of efficient, affordable, and quality public utility services through a committed, resourceful team of professionals in close collaboration with all stakeholders. The journey to achieving this mandate has been challenging, as it has been stimulating and in some cases rewarding. Despite the growth and the positive change that we have effected, there is still a lot of work to be done that will seriously, because we have a lot of things that were outstanding that needed to be fixed. Madam Chairman, our understanding and anticipation of the facts has led us to a prolonged and multi-layered approach to many of the challenges facing the utility sector. Over the past year, for example, we have continued with our strategy of promoting conservation and sustainable living, not just with regards to water, but also electricity and waste management. This, of course, is in keeping with our National Development Strategy of Vision 2030, which deals with the important issues of climate change, the use of renewable resources, water, food, and energy security, among others. With regard to the water sector, we continue to aggressively address the imbalance of demand and supply through the establishment and rehabilitation of the necessary infrastructure. As it relates to electricity, we continue to build modern climate resilience infrastructure that will meet the growing electricity needs of Trinidad and Tobago for decades to come. It must be noted, Madam Chairman, that even as we improve the reliability and the quality of our service, we have also focused our efforts on extending these services to the underserved groups within our societies. These programs which will facilitate this include the Community Work Improvement Program, the Rewiring and Electrification Program, and the Utility Assistance Program. Over the fiscal, all these efforts, particularly those related to the reliability of our service and their sustainable use, will be accelerated and intensified. Madam Chairman, we at the Ministry of Public Utilities look forward to the year ahead with all of its challenges. As you are aware, we are facing intense challenges coming forward as a result of climate change. We have a lot of work to do, especially in the water sector, because there's lots of things that need to be done, infrastructural work, etc. But we continue our mantra in trying to do more with less, with the limited resources that we have. We try to make sure as much as possible that, as I've been using the analogy, we try to fix the plane while it's in the air and try to ensure that the service of the population is provided, all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is provided with a reliable supply of water. That's our goal and that's our mission. I thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that the sum of $2,791,253,400 for Head 39, Ministry of Public Utilities stand part of the schedule. Honorable members, the sum of $2,791,253,400 for Head 39, Ministry of Public Utilities, is comprised of monies proposed for expenditure under the following subheads and items to be found in the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure, the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly, and the draft estimates of the development program. We shall now proceed to consider the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure. Subhead 01, Personal Expenditure. Item 001, General Administration. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under the item salaries and cost of living, I see there is an increase by some $200,000. Marginal increase. What is that for?
The increase will be used for the payment of increments, arrears for acting appointment and promotions. The 2020 estimates will cover the ministry's 110 staff. We do have acting and promotions. We have the PS and we have the deputy PS, etc., and other acting appointments.
Item 002, Meteorological Services. Item 005, Electrical Inspectorate. Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, just a quick question on 01 under electoral inspectorate. Could you say how many employees there are at that department and how many vacant positions?
With regard to electorate, we have 41 substantive holders. We have 7 vacancies.
Okay, thank you.
Subhead 02, Goods and Services. Item 001, General Administration. Member for Caroni East.
Honorable, good morning to all. Good morning, Madam Chair. Line item 42, Honorable Minister, street lighting. You had 121 million allocated in 2019 as your estimate, and the revised is 31 million. Could you give an understanding of what happened when you were allocated 121 and you basically spent 31 according to the revised estimate?
Again, if you would repeat, we said we had
121 million for 2019 allocated under the budgetary allocation.
On page 249.
249. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And the revised estimate was 31 million.
Yes.
Just want to give us an appreciation of the difference in what was given to you and what was actually spent according to the revised estimate.
All right. Okay. So, well, the 121 that was given to me was really for street lighting programs. You have the
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah. Okay, the payment in 2018, physical payment in 2018, covered 15 months. And the payment for fiscal 2019 payment covered September 2018 to January. So really what you've been having, it's really a sort of run over of the payments. All right, so it's not a true reflection of what happened in 2018 was the amount. The figure in 2018 represented some figures in 2019. And therefore, the amounts that happened, the revised estimate, is really what the actual amount that was going to be spent in 2019, and therefore 2020 figure 50 million is in keeping with making those payments.
So you would have spent about 31 million in 2019, 2018, 2019?
Yes, the revised estimate for 2019 is 31 million.
No, so you said that there was a carryover from 18 to 19. What was the carryover that enabled you to get a budgetary allocation of 121 million?
All right, in fiscal 2018, as I said, the arrears of 66 million, was estimated 110. All right, I will get back to you with the correct explanation.
Yeah, and perhaps just give us an appreciation of the necessity for moving from 31 million to 50 million, if there is increased work that you think you have.
Yes, well, in the case of that, I mean, there is a lot of increased requests for street lighting that we have based on our estimates that I have from a number of individuals, and therefore we have anticipated that we will have to do a little bit more street lighting to satisfy the needs in 2020, hence the reason for the increase.
Ganga, you have...
Member for Shogunas West.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to line item 34, University Graduate Recruitment Program, there's an allocation in 2019 of $1 million. Was that allocation utilized? And because there's another allocation of $1 million in 2020.
No, that allocation for $1 million for the university program, that was not utilized.
Is there any specific reason as to why, given the unemployment rate amongst university graduates?
Well, there are some procedures as it regards to what it is that is the criteria to be used and so forth, and those things were not worked out, and we expect that it will be worked out this year for us to be able to utilize it.
So this was a significant program by the minister in the budget of 2019 for the recruitment of university graduates. So you're saying that the procedures weren't worked out and that therefore there was no, what you're telling us, there were no employment of graduates as a result of procedural hindrances?
Well, there was no employment of graduates under this particular program utilizing this particular funding and this particular allocation.
Okay, Madam Chair, line item 53, refunds to WASA water improvement rate. There is a significant increase of $65 million for the 2020 estimates from 231 in 2019, the revised estimates. For purposes of the population, Honorable Minister, perhaps you should explain what is the water improvement rate and justify the significant increase of $65 million.
Well, the water improvement rate is really the additional rate that is charged, additional tax that is put on the point leases. And that is the funds that is paid and comes back to to WASA. So as recurrent, it is paid, and then it goes into the consolidated fund and comes back to WASA. In this case, there is going to be there's been some arrears payments for the amounts for last year that was not paid to WASA that is going to be taken up in this year's funding. And hence the reason for the increase. It's just really an allocation of monies that comes to WASA, paid to the consolidated fund, comes back to WASA. And that is just 1/4 of a payment that was being estimated in 2020.
So I take it then, therefore, this $65 million is arrears of monies due to WASA as a result of the collection of the water improvement rate by the government and the non-payment to the Water and Storage Authority. There is no significant
there is no
utilization by point leases.
No, there is no significant utilization. It's just that arrears being
the average.
It's just the amount being estimated in 2020.
Member for Caroni Central.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Chair. On the street lighting, 42, how is that 50 million split? You mentioned that they are based on requests. Is there a program that is set, and then to that you add the request, or is it based on a universal set of requests from the different constituencies, and they are allocated on that basis?
Well, you know, it's a combi. We get a lot of requests from different ministries. All right, we get a lot of requests that comes in and the request is allocated accordingly. Now, this is also the line on which you pay. Remember, at the ministry, we pay all of our bills for electricity, for all of this lighting. So this really amount is really, this is really the payment of the bills for street lighting.
Or it's for the bills incurred?
Yes.
So it's no new street lighting?
No, this is not for new street lighting per se. We have that under another allocation.
Another allocation, okay. And 46, natural disasters, you have $50,000 there. What would this be used for? Preparation for what?
Well, the amount was an estimate in the event of a natural disaster.
But what would it focus on?
I mean, it's fairly broad-based in the case of if we do have climate change, you have a lot of things that are coming on board, and therefore, should there be a natural disaster, we will need to be able to have some funding to deal with that. And it really is just dealing with anything that you could anticipate, whether it's flooding, whether it's wind, whatever it is that regards a natural disaster. And, part of business continuity planning in dealing with disaster preparedness.
Okay. All right, so I get the impression that it might be actually for that, business continuity. Is it for that?
Yes.
Yeah. And the final thing, and you get a chance to clarify, is there any chance, 53, through you, Madam Speaker, that there will be any increase in water rate over the next year?
That again, for sure, no, there's not going to be any increase. So that increase is not to be as a result of water rates increases in next year.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Member for Kamuta Manzanilla.
Chair, my question was addressed.
Thank you. Member for Caroni East.
Honorable Minister, in your explanation to the member for Chaguanas West in relation to item 53, you explained that there is the WASA issue in Point Lisas, and I see you have water improvement rate. I lack the knowledge in terms of what it really means, so if you can be kind enough to explain it to us.
okay, when the RIC passes rates, so there's a rate that we all pay. With regard to the water in the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, again, that water was provided by Desalcott at a very high rate. Those individuals in the industrial estate itself, they do not, well, the rate is the rate by the RIC. What was decided to deal with allowing them to pay a little bit more as industrial customers, because we put the desalination plant to give them a reliability of supply, and they had no problem in paying more to get that reliability of supply. So what was done was a tax that was charged to these people, to these individuals, and that is what makes up this water improvement rate. So there are special taxes charged to them, but all taxes need to find themselves back into the consolidated fund. And therefore, it finds itself back into the consolidated fund, then it comes back to WASA, and then WASA pays the bill to the desalination company underneath materials and supplies. So it's that rate, that additional amount that is paid to the individuals, paid by the industrial customers for water.
Thank you for the clarity, Minister. But just one more area on that. You would have a number of companies under public utilities for which you're offering that payment to WASA and so on. What are some of these companies within the Point Lisa's grouping under public utilities?
All the companies in Point Lisas will be, well, it used to be the Iron and Steel Company, it would be the Methanol Company, it will be the Urea Company.
Okay.
It will be those types of industrial customers who require a certain type of upgrade.
Water.
Water.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think you want me to provide a whole list
No,
of
no,
it.
you have done very well. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Thank you.
For Chaguanas West?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a matter of clarification for those who are listening in. The water improvement rate is charged under the Water Works and Water Conservation Act, and therefore it is by way of legislation. And that is why there is this circular requirement of it goes into the consolidated fund and then comes out back to pay. And it is really for the Point Lisas, and the justification has always been, it takes 3 tons of water to make a ton of methanol or urea or ammonia. So that is processed water. It's part of the industrial thrust.
Item 002, meteorological services on page 250. Item 005, electrical inspectorate. Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases. Item 001, general administration. Item 002, meteorological services. Item 005, electrical inspectorate. Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies. Item 001, regional bodies. Item 003, United Nations organizations. Item 007, households. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Minister, the Utilities Assistance Program has an increase from 3.4 million to 4 million in 2020 estimates. Could you tell us what is how many recipients are within this program and the geographical spread of the recipients?
All right, in fiscal 2020, funds will be utilized for the Utility Assistance Program. The projected beneficiaries for fiscal 2020 is 13,800. There is also the Water Tank Assistance Program. The projected beneficiaries for fiscal 2020 is about 70 households. And the Solar Assistance Program, the projected beneficiaries are 5 households. All right, for 2019, we had the water tank assistance. They had 32 beneficiaries. The solar panel assistance, we had 2 beneficiaries. And the utility assistance program, we had about 132 beneficiaries in TNTech and 12,272 beneficiaries with regard to WASA. So that kind of is an idea of the program. It's the increase is relatively small. We kind of looking at continue to provide. We have a lot of backup requests, and therefore our projections are a little bit based on the estimates that we have seen for requests coming into the program.
Member for Caroni East.
Honorable Minister, line item 08.
Zero, excuse?
Under 007, line
Okay.
item 08.
08.
Refunds to TNTech with respect to rebate on electricity bills. 50 million allocated in 2019. According to the revised estimate, 13 million utilized, so 37 million not utilized, and in 2020 your estimate is 40 million. Could you give a little explanation on that nomenclature of rebate on electricity bills, what it signifies? Is money paid back to TNTech?
Well, all right. This is a refund. There's a rebate arrears for the period 2018 to 2019. So the estimate for 2020, we are looking again to pick up on some arrears payments that needs to be paid in 2020.
To TNTech?
Yes.
And that would be as a result of what?
Well, this particular program is a program where we assist individuals where their bills are up to $300, then you get a rebate of $25.
I know where you're going there. So that's fine. You have answered it.
Okay, thank you.
Member for Caroni Central.
Minister, I didn't quite understand something you said just now. Under the Utilities Assistance Program, when you were outlining the beneficiaries, you said solar heating 5. Is that correct?
Not solar heating, solar panel assistance. Solar panel assistance.
Okay. This program is not connected to the incentives provided by the Minister of Finance in the budget this year for solar panels.
No.
This is something that existed before.
Yes, this is something that existed before. This is for people who are outside of the grid, and you could be able to get a solar panel if required to help in providing electricity.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for the clarification.
Chagonas West.
Under line item 40, gratuities to contract officers. Honorable Minister, there I see that there is a allocation of $3.7 million, and this is a new sub-item. Prior to this allocation, when there gratuities paid to contract officers?
From what I'm, this is the amount it is going to be paid this year. There are 52 people through this line item. Prior to that, they were paid by the Controller of Accounts. So it was just an allocation now to this particular line item for them to be paid.
Can I just say that this is the same point I made before, that we have decentralized the payment of gratuities throughout the ministries and agencies.
Okay.
Okay. Item 009, other transfers. Member for Caroni East.
Honorable Minister, line item 04, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Postal Corporation, TT Post. Is this an expenditure incurred from TT Post, which the Ministry of Public Utilities has to pay for?
Well, this is really the subvention that is given to TT Post to run the operation, the additional subvention that is given to them to run the operations.
Right, thanks. Does TT Post generate an income for itself? Because you said if this supplements
yes, this is the supplemental income that is given to them to run the income, to run their.
Would it be possible to give the national community appreciation of what income TT Post generates, so that you, the state, and us, all of us, taxpayers, have to pay $70 million to TT Post? Why can't it be self-sufficient, and you don't have to pay $70 million to them?
Well, okay, for example, the revenue for TT Post, and TT Post, we have been trying as much as possible to increase the revenue. As you would realize, the postal system, the actual post from the mail is actually decreasing. But we have been working with TT Post over the years in increasing revenue in other areas, especially areas like courier systems. So, for example, in 2018, the revenue for TT Post was $66 million in 2009, but the expenditure is $141. All right. In 2019, the revenue is $68 million, but the expenditure is $147. In 2020, the expenditure is $77 million.
That is the major expenditure, is it?
Sorry, not the expenditure. My apologies.
Yeah,
the revenue. I'm giving you revenue figures, as you asked.
Your proposed revenue, yeah. But the expenditure, is it as a result of major part? Is it personnel? or is it?
No, well, the expenditure side of TTPOS, TTPOS is getting into new business to be able to generate the revenue, like the courier side of the business. So what we have been trying to do is to, transform TTPOS and try to see if they could get into new items, new lines of business, which is increasing the expenditure, but it's also giving them increased revenue. Because that's an organization that needs to reposition itself, as you will understand. Revenue from mail, which is a bulk of the operation, is actually reducing. So we have to do something to try to reduce that level of subvention over time. And how do we go about getting into new lines of business in TTPOS to increase the revenue? That's the challenge. And that's the transformation that needs to happen in TTPOS. Because right now, it is a drain on the Treasury.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may I be privileged, while I'm on this line item, could I ask some questions on a few, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23, which basically revolve around almost the same thing of principle.
09?
Yes, I'm on
009, you can
Yeah.
proceed.
Honorable Minister, line item 14 at first, let's take that. That's the TNTech repayment of loans to Cove Power Station. That's a loan taken when, and what was the amount of the loan, and how much has been paid so far?
The actual details of the loan was taken, the repayment of the loan was taken in 2010, right? And it's due to end in 2021.
That's 11 years.
Right? It's a $76 million US government loan, all right? And it was used really to upgrade the Cove Power Station and to increase the power supply there. We needed to increase Cove and Tobago to make them more resilient and more reliant on themselves. So we have put in new power supplies in Tobago that has now taken them up. I think power in Tobago is now up, if I'm not mistaken, to about 100 megawatts.
Right, okay, I understand the significance of the Cove Power, but I just wanted to have an appreciation when the loan will end, and you gave that answer.
Okay.
Could you similarly indicate you have two large loans of TNTech of $812 million. That covers line item 18 and 19 with principal and interest, and then another $800 million in 20 and 21, which covers principal and interest. The same manner, could you indicate when the loans were taken, how much, and when it ends, how much? That's a monthly payment, yearly payment towards the principal and interest. If you don't have it there,
All right, so in 2015, the government agreed to the conversion of TNTech's debt to TGU, which was at the time about $1.6 billion loan. All right, so that was for 18. That's that loan. So as a result of the arrangements with TGU and the taking of electricity and so forth from TGU, which is the power supplier to TNTech, there was an outstanding loan there, and that was that loan. The other loan that you're talking about was which one?
well, when does the loan end for number 18?
Number 18, when is the loan?
The same one you're speaking about, TGU, with respect.
The TGU loan ends, my records, in 2026.
2026. So that's 7 more years, probably, at about $90 million a year. So we still owe approximately $630 million on that loan.
I will give way to your matter at this point in time.
Don't worry too much. And then the other one on 20, on line item 20, this one is $800 million, not $812 million. That's a separate loan. Could you give the explanations on that one? When was it taken, for how long, and what with respect to what?
This one in 2020. So the loan was done in, it's the same, the loan, that particular loan, I'm being advised, was done in 2 tranches, all right? one was what? 8 years, and one was 14 years. So the one for 8 years that is going to due in 2026, and the one for 14 years is due in 2032.
And that's the one here that you're paying approximately 40 million per year.
Yes.
So 13 more years, is still owe 420 million there. So with both loans, we owe approximately 1 billion, 420 plus 630.
What's back?
I say with both loans, we still possibly owe close to 1 billion, maturing in 2026 and 2032.
Yeah, go ahead now. You go ahead.
The Minister of Finance has a good mathematical brain.
Yes,
so
I just
let's
was
hear it.
inquiring if you were asking about the loan of $1.6 billion the UNC took 1 week before the general election in 2015 for TNTech. Are you talking about that loan?
You have two loans.
Are you speaking about that one?
I am not. I
The
am
one
not,
you all took
I am not
1 week
knowledgeable
before the
about
general
it.
election, $1.6 billion? With a short term, with a 6 months repayment? Are you speaking about that one? We had to
No, I'm
refinance
speaking
that.
about the one that
No, we
is
had
at
to
20.
refinance
No,
that.
no.
You're saying no?
Your colleague said that there is a loan taken that is expiring in 2026 and one taken that's expiring in 2032.
There was one that-
Those are the two loans
There was
that I'm
one
asking.
for $1.6 billion, which expired in February of 2016, which we had to refinance. This could be it.
Is it?
$1.6 billion.
You see, we had to refinance it. When the loan was taken, it was a short-term facility, and then it needed to be refinanced. So what we have done is to refinance it over a longer-term facility between 8 years and a 14-year loan. So the two loans was really that short-term loan that was there that needed to then be
But
extended.
in effect was to pay TGU,
Yes.
and that was
Get
a
out
necessity.
1 week before the general election
No,
with a 6 months repayment.
But
You could
it-
believe that?
but it was
$1.6
to pay
billion.
TGU.
Yes.
We repaid in 6 months.
All right, okay. But you still owe $1 billion on it. After 4 years, you owe $1
Madam
billion.
Chair,
Well,
Yes,
I mean,
Sonnet.
we couldn't find, when it matured, we couldn't find the 1.6 billion, and therefore you needed to spread it out over a long period. And now this is just the repayments now that we are servicing the loan. So these are the servicing payments of the loan over that period. And those were the types of terms that we felt the cash flow could have afforded the country to pay.
Could you give an appreciation what the interest rate is like? Was it a 5%, 8%, 10%? As this government prones to do to take
We negotiated
loans that are
better
about
interest rates than what you
8.5%?
negotiated.
The rates on the 8 years is about 4.3, 2.23, and the rate on the 14 years is about 5.28. So the rates are not that bad, very.
But it could have been better.
Minister of Finance, 1 minute, I'm recognizing the acting Attorney General. You wanted to make an intervention?
just for clarification, I just wanted to find out from this committee if that was part of the horrific bed of thorns that they had left for us, Minister of
Yes, it
Finance.
was. Yes,
All
it
right.
was. Oil at $26 and you had to pay back $1.6 billion.
Oh, how.
So, member for Caroni Central?
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Chairman, sorry. Water Resource Management Unit. Okay, I saw that in 2019, the money wasn't spent, and I see it's here again. What are you trying to do with that? Are you establishing something new?
All right, let me just go back to page
254.
254.
It's the same page, actually.
Oh, yes, that's the Water Resource Management Unit.
Yeah.
That's an internal, that's a unit that we are allocated some money. It was not done in as you
Yeah,
said.
I realize.
It wasn't?
But no, I just, I'm not trying to find out anything except, is that a new unit that you're sort of establishing in the ministry to deal with the question of water resource? I imagine things like water capture and stuff like that. I don't know if. Or is it managing the existing resources, or I don't understand. I just need to understand it clearer.
Yes, it is. It is a project that we are looking at probably to improve the management at the ministry in dealing with this particular water resource management. It is something that we are exploring.
Okay.
And therefore, hence the allocation for 20.
Okay, and I noticed the next one, 03, Waste Recycling Management Authority. It was not established and there is no allocation. What has happened to that?
We have this rate, the recycling management, the recycling business is now being handled at SwimCall.
SwimCall?
By SwimCall.
Okay.
And therefore, all of the whole recycling agency, or we decided to deal with all of that as a unit in SwimCall. So funding for that is under SwimCall.
Okay, and 04, Postal Corporation. This allocation here, does it include, does it include the completion of this zip code exercise?
Yes.
And when is that likely to be completed?
We are expecting that this should be done, this 42 exercise. We are targeting to have it completed by the end of the year. This year, meaning December, calendar year.
This year?
Yes.
All right. Okay, and is the zip code system, I mean, I'm just asking you this as a general question. I know that the specificity of it is not your responsibility. But is this zip code system going to be aligned with the capacity of the EBC to send out notices for elections, for instance, both for the local and the general? Or will it be ready only for the general? You know, they send out notices to people to say, this is your polling station, this is your number, etc.
Well, again, the zip code system, as you know, it's a long outstanding project. Linking it with whether or not it will be aligned with the EBC and those issues surrounding there. I mean, as you're right. I mean, the zip code system is an upgrade of a particular project to allow Trinidadians and Tobagonians to have a proper zip code. That project will be completed by, hopefully, by December, give or take, a few months into January. How that system is then going to be utilized thereafter, and it's operational even as we speak, because as one area is fixed, the individuals utilize their zip code even now. So there are people who are utilizing their new zip code address, and we hope to have that project completed by December, January. How it's utilized thereafter, I can't speak to that.
Okay, and one final question. It's a general question, Minister, about Tech, and it's up to you to answer it. Recently, there was a problem of electricity generation and supply involving TGU that resulted in basically loss of electricity in different parts of the country. I just wondered if there was a particular problem that needed to be addressed, or is it something that simply happened and was addressed already and it's done for?
To the best of my knowledge, there is no permanent issue. So it would have had to be a temporary one that would have happened between TGU and Tech
yes,
that resulted in something. It's mechanical problems, but there is no problem per se, or no ongoing outstanding problem between generation and supply that is outstanding. No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the Honourable Minister. Minister, with respect to the Water Resource Management Unit, I'm a bit puzzled because I was of the opinion that the government had taken a policy position to separate the Water Resources Agency from under the aegis of the Water and Sewage Authority. And I thought that this allocation was in fact consistent with that. But the explanation you gave was not consistent with what was in my mind. So perhaps I need to get some clarity on that issue.
That is still, I mean, it is still a government. It is still something that the government has been contemplating. We continue to look at that, and I agree that is best practice. We need to determine the execution of it, and if we do that, to one extent, one of the models that are being contemplating in that separation is to bring that aspect of the unit within the ministry to help to facilitate that separation as an interim measure. This particular funding will be really as we explore the different models to set it up. This is one of the options that we have catered for in this budget to facilitate that separation.
Thank you. I think it's kind of late in the day at this stage, but nevertheless. Item 4, Postal Corporation. Could you indicate how many vacancies there exist in the Postal Corporation? I know that you have quite a challenge in getting a full-time CEO in the corporation. So could you indicate how many vacancies, how many acting positions? And if you don't have that, could provide it subsequently.
Yes, I definitely will have to provide that later.
Member for Kumucha Manzanilla.
Madam Chair, Honorable Minister, on line item 02, I'm just asking if this unit that is established here will be addressing outstanding issues. In particular, I have two outstanding issues in my constituency, which is the enough pipes from Fishing Pond through Kaiwal, as well as the booster that requires three-phase electricity. Would this unit address situations like this? Okay.
No.
Item 011, transfers to state enterprises. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 06, Water and Sewage Authority. Minister, there is a decrease of 311,236,000.
Just 1 minute, sorry. We're not at current transfers to statutory boards and other bodies. The item, Member for Chaguanas West, is limited to 254. Member for Carinese.
Gagal, you have anything on that? No. Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, under 011 transfers to state enterprises, line item 02, Solid Waste Management Company Limited. Could you give us an understanding about what is the complement of personnel within solid waste? That's one.
To get back to you with those figures.
And similarly, what I asked previously on the Postal Corporation, do they generate revenue and how much do they generate on an annual basis?
So you've gone back?
No, it's the same line item 02.
Same question.
Same question,
Okay.
but a second
Yes,
question
sir.
I'll get back to you
on that, how much they generate.
Yes.
Okay.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, with respect to the Solid Waste Management Company Limited, has a CEO been appointed to that enterprise?
Yes, one was identified, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the person should be taking up their offer November 1st.
Okay, so we move on, members. Subhead 01, current transfers to statutory boards and other similar bodies. We shall now consider the draft estimates of the revenue.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
The MP for Chaguanas West had asked a question on 51.
We're now getting there.
We're now getting there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the draft estimates of the revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly. 51, Water and Sewage Authority. Subhead 01, Personal Expenditure. Item 001, General Administration. Is that where you are, Chaguanas West?
No.
Okay.
I was at the global figure in which there's a reduction of $300 million to the Water and Sewage Authority in the previous book, Madam Speaker, and I wanted to find out how can the minister expect that the Water and Sewage Authority to function with that significant reduction in expenditure?
The major reduction really centers around materials and supplies, and bills, and the payment of money in that particular area for desalinated water, which is approximately about $6 million a year. $6 million US a month. So that particular area was dealt with. The payment on that particular that bill, which is no longer catered for in there, and that would be dealt with from other sources of funding. So it's really then a reduction in an allocation to pay that water bill for the SALCOT in that line item.
So if I were to, just for purposes of my clarity, Madam Chair, it means that therefore, because of there is less usage of water or less purchase of water from the SALCOT, you have that reduction?
No. I said there's a payment of water to the SALCOT will not be done through materials and supplies, which it was previously done, and therefore, hence the reduction of 300 million. It's not that it will be taken; it will just be paid for from a different process.
So where is the payment going to come from now for the SALCOT water?
No. The payment for desalination for that water will be done via a loan that will then be taken to pay for them.
Now, Minister, you indicated in your answer that it is not coming from materials and supplies.
No.
Is this going to, in any way, this reduction, going to impact upon your capital program?
No, it wouldn't have any impact on my capital program.
Okay, member for Caroni is?
So, Minister, you indicated just a while ago that you intend to take a loan to pay for the desalcot water.
Yes.
What is your proposed loan that you're looking for? And in terms of payment of close to 500 million per year for desalcot water?
That loan is presently being negotiated, and it will be funded. So desalcot water will be funded from that proceeds of that loan.
So not from the 1.6 billion that you allocate to WASA now?
No.
All right.
Member for Tabakit?
Why you're using loan financing to finance basically what is a recurrent expenditure for water?
The desalcot project has cost this country between $5 and $10 billion since inception. Billion.
TT.
Billion, yes,
TT.
TT. And when you think about it, it might have been a better idea to build some dams. I'm sure you could have built adequate dams for $10 billion. It has become impossible to finance the desalcot expenditure out of recurrent revenues. Impossible. So that we have to go by way of loan financing. We simply don't have the cash flow.
Minister, through you, Chair, the water from the desalcot plant, wasn't it really supposed to be used by the industries mainly in Point Lisas, and therefore they should have been charged a rate of return that would have returned the expenditure?
That is a fact, but the Point Lisa industries were the profit center of WASA. You understand?
I don't know if I'm hearing you.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
By purchasing expensive water from desalcot, it reduced the free cash flow of WASA because the water sold to the industrial estate was a profit center for WASA. By using expensive desalinated water, the profitability of the operation went down. reducing the free cash flow to WASA. Do you
So
understand
what
now?
you did, you take the desalinate water and you distribute it to residential.
We didn't do that. You did that.
You did that.
UNC did that.
Okay, so it's distributed to residential.
UNC sent
And you are saying that's
the
a bad
desalinated
decision.
water into the, you did that. I
No, no,
ask
that-
yourself.
whether
You're
we did it
asking
or
me
who did it.
Whether your decision was a good decision.
Whether
Ask
who did
yourself.
it, who did it.
Oh, come on.
If it was a bad decision, why didn't you reverse the decision and do what you thought was right?
We didn't reverse it. You all expanded it.
There's a contract in place, a long-term contract for the purchase of desalinated
And-
water. Did you want us to cancel that?
Are you paying for the desal water in US dollars?
Yes.
So you're paying for
And that's
water,
another problem.
you're paying $72 million a year,
Yes.
if I heard the minister right,
Yes.
which is about 500 million TT dollars a year to desalcot.
Yes.
Why are you paying them in US dollars?
That's the contract that
Because-
you
Why-
entered into.
Well, in
You
a similar
contracted the
manner,
contract.
Minister,
I
in a
think you
similar
should-
manner, when you went and you renegotiated other contracts, what prevented you from going and renegotiating the contract with Destalcott to pay in TT dollars since the water is local? Why can't you?
Well-
If you have a foreign exchange problem and you have 72 million US dollars being paid for basically what are local raw materials.
Well,
You negotiate a US dollar
But they-
contract and telling us to go and break it?
and these individuals, these companies would have then probably, because of that contract, borrowed money in US dollars based on the fact that they had a contract for a US dollar inflow. And as such, it is not that easy to just change the contract on them like that.
Madam Speaker, I just want to put on the record, out of fear that this conversation might be misunderstood, that when we went into desalinated water, this problem that we are now experiencing was raised as a potential. And the question is on the Hansard as to whether this desalinated water will enter the domestic supplier. The answer was no. We entered into the contract, and then the water entered the domestic system and has been there, and it was expanded. And as a result of that, that project has bankrupted WASA permanently, and we now have to borrow money because where we were earning money in Point Lisas, we now have to find money to pay, and that has put WASA into a permanent bankruptcy. So I don't want anybody on the other side to come here and misrepresent that, because I prosecuted that case in the opposition when we went into desalinated water, and that is a fact.
Okay, so I'll take the hands in this order. Member for Laventille West, then member for Caroni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in following on the very the powerful submission just made by the member for Diego Martin West, if I'm not mistaken, that contract takes us to 2036. Yes, renegotiated to 2036. Yes.
Okay. All right, so I now recognize member for Shogunas West, and then Caroni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I need to bring some veracity to the conversation here. In 1999, the contract was for 24 million gallons of water to serve the Point Lisas estate. Subsequently, the Manning administration entered into negotiation to increase the quantum of water to 45 and 60-something million gallons of water per day from the Salcott. In the meantime, in that interregnum, the Manning administration, the PNM, entered into an arrangement with 7 Seas for a desalination plant in Point 14 at twice the cost of the water produced at Point Lisas. So when I hear this born-again approach, evangelical approach that they deny the existence of their decision-making, you would recall, members would recall, that in 2010, Prime Minister Manning had plans to build 5 desalination plants throughout this country. There was a desalination plant in Laloon, Maruga, by the Korean company that did not bring out 1 pint of clear water, but was abandoned. So what was happening and the rationale then, and the rationale for provision of water, public water supply was being utilized to fund big business, and that is what the member for Diego Martin West was supporting then, and the deprivation of the people. At that time, it was affordable. Now circumstances have changed, and like a lot of people who now get in trouble with the Me Too movement, the reality today is quite different.
So, Karen.
No, I'd like to come in if there's nobody
Just 1
else.
minute. Just 1 minute. I'll
2014.
allow you. I
Thank you.
believe Karen East hand was up before you.
Sure.
Member for Karen East.
In the same way, the Honorable Prime Minister and a team went to renegotiate contracts in the energy sector. 4 years in government, if the Prime Minister felt that this was an onerous issue, why could he not have gone to renegotiate this? Bearing in mind his previously, contracts could be renegotiated. Did he seek to renegotiate any of those contracts?
I'll allow the Minister of Finance to answer, and after this, we are going to go in the particular order, because this is going to come back again when we deal with WASA under transfers. Okay, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to set the record straight. This discussion is about the Point Lisas desalination plant. This line item deals with payment by WASA for water produced by the Point Lisas desalination plant. This line item is about nothing else. And that $72 million is the cause of WASA's very tenuous financial situation. WASA cannot afford to pay $72 million a year for that desalinated water. It accepts that water from Desalcott at a loss. If WASA was not burdened with that huge expenditure, that expensive water, WASA might very well be breaking even or in the black. I just want the public to know that that desalinated water, that decision of the Pandey administration of 1995 to 2001, 1995 to 2001, that decision to enter into a contract to construct and purchase water from a desalination plant has bankrupted WASA.
Okay, so,
Madam Minister,
member,
Madam Chair, both.
Member for Karen East, what I suggested is that I took a question under the global issue. It has now narrowed down to a particular issue which we will deal with in its turn. Okay? All right, so we at item 001, General Administration, page 189. Subhead 02, Goods and Services, item 001, General Administration. Subhead, sorry,
One from 01 totally? General Administration,
I
00.
called 01, item 001, General Administration.
Right.
I paused.
Okay.
I saw no one.
No, well,
So I went on to subhead 02, Goods and
No,
Services.
well, I maybe you missed my hand.
Excuse
I
me?
need to put my hand higher.
Sorry. Where
Because
are you?
I'm salaries and cost of living.
Okay.
Um,
So I am recalling, and I ask everybody to kindly pay attention
No,
because,
I'm paying attention.
no, I'm not making any personal judgment. I'm saying I'd ask everybody to pay attention because we're breaching the rules that we set for ourselves. Subhead 01, personal expenditure, item 001, general administration.
Salaries and cost of living allowance, ma'am.
Yes, member for Tabaki.
Right. 2019, the revised estimate was $350 million. But I noticed that in 2020, the estimate is $213.9 million, which is a cut of $136 million. How are you going to support this cut? Or what is the nature of this cut without cutting personnel in the organization? Because salaries and cost of living, in my view, supports personnel. So if you're cutting from $350 million to $214 million, does that represent a cut in personnel?
Certification of contract workers to goods and service, to contract employees, rather than it being carried here. So it's a reclassification, no cutting of workers, no increase in water rates, no cutting of workers.
Okay, can we move on? Member for Caroni East.
Under the same heading, goods and services, line item 16.
No. Just now.
You're not there.
I went back, no. Are we finished with subhead 001, personal expenditure, member for Shogunas West?
Madam Chair, thank you. Item 06, remuneration to board members. What is the justification for this increase from 500,000 revised estimates in 2019 to 627,000, an increase of 127,000 for board members?
We had 3 vacancies that we have put on the board this year, and therefore we are catering for it to carry forward.
Okay.
Needed some additional skills on the board.
Member for Shogunas West?
Yeah. I noticed, Madam Chair, that the overtime for daily rated workers that has decreased significantly on line item 29.
29, yes.
By some $17 million. Could you, but the line item overtime for monthly paid officers has increased by $2.4 million. What is the justification for the increase for monthly paid officers and the decrease for daily paid?
You know, I mean, generally, and again, generally we have been tightening and trying to manage the overtime. So I think when you look at between daily paid and the increase in daily paid and the increase in monthly paid, the net result is going to be a reduction in overtime payments. All right, where's monthly paid? Yeah. And generally we've been putting systems in place. We've been putting systems in place to deal with the reduction in overtime in the organization, in the labor force. So there might have been some slight increase in the monthly pay based on what we have projected, but we're also looking at trying to manage the overtime in putting a number of systems, trying to get some flex time, trying to put some shift systems in place. And therefore, we are reducing the amount of workers, not workers, reducing the amount of payments to these workers in overtime.
Member for Couva South, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, I just heard your response to my colleague, the member for Shogunas West. I'm a bit puzzled in terms of the rationale that you are providing. You are increasing overtime for monthly paid. You're reducing overtime for daily paid. So if you are reducing daily paid overtime, who the monthly paid will be, what the monthly paid will be doing? Will they not be supervising some personnel from a monthly paid point of view?
Yes, but you see, if, for example, you work, if you are able to get the job done without, as I said before, using some bit of flex time and some bit of shift systems and so forth, you are then being able, a large volume of workers, which were then being paid overtime, right, to do the work, and you have a shift system, then you are able to you're getting them to do the work at normal time. So the impact would be different. Yes, you might then have to have a monthly paid person to help supervise, right? But the impact, the overall impact on the organization will be a reduction in overtime in the organization. So it might have to facilitate that increased efficiency, you might have to have some improvement in the monthly paid, but the daily paid workers, where you have a lot of workers, you might be able to then, with tighter management, you could reduce that particular overtime.
Well, Minister, the amount of leaks I see in the constituency of Couva South, for example, I don't buy your rationale that what you are providing to this meeting here.
Member for Tabakit?
Ma'am, we haven't gone to goods and services yet, right?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
Member
I'll wait.
Sorry, member for Karen East, I'm not sure whether the pink pen. Okay, good, fine. So we can move on. Subhead 02, goods and services, item 001, general administration. We're on pages 189 and 190. Member for Tabaki, that's where you are.
Mr. Minister, you said that there'll be no cut in personnel. Now, if you look at contract employment, item 16, line item 16, you originally said that you consolidated salaries and cost of living into contract employment, and therefore that is why you had a reduction of $136 million. However, I'm noting now that in 2019, your contract employment went up to $370 million. And although your salaries had gone up by a further $44 million, and now it's coming down. In 2020, estimates at $306 million, which is a drop of approximately $64 million, 63.323. So if you say, if you are now cutting contract employment also, it means somebody is going to suffer in the long run. So that it appears to me that if you add the salaries and cost of living for 2019 revised, you get $720 million, and you add the same figures for 2020, you get $519 million. So you have a $200 million difference. Well, somebody's going to suffer, because if you're saving $200 million on the salaries and so on, you have to be cutting resources in terms of people who are working.
So the process in managing WASA throughout has been a whole idea of looking at when we have contracts that have actually come up, when individuals' contracts have come up, and in some cases where we don't need these contracts anymore, we have been going through that rationalization exercise. And therefore, over the period where we are not terminating any particular contracts, all right, but when these contracts have come up for renewal, and where we feel that we are able to then bring efficiency to the organization, we have been utilizing that process in trying to ensure that the overall number of monies that we pay between recurrent expenditure in WASA, as you know, we have to then try to take some of that money and put it in some of the developmental work. So it has been that whole process in managing the employees, trying to manage the overtime, again, all with a view of trying your best to keep the recurrent expenditure tight and channel the money into capital expenditure.
Mr. Minister, I appreciate you wouldn't want to say that you're cutting personnel, but let us face it. The reality is here that people are going to lose their jobs, whether they are a contract or not. Nothing is wrong you saying that. You did it at Petrotrin and you gave a rationale for it. If there's a rationale to give for it at WASA, give the rationale. If you're saying, look, it's my policy decision that I'm going to have to cut expenditure by cutting the number of workers in WASA, say that.
No, well, I'm not saying that, I'm saying that you deal with these matters. If you look at situations and if you recognize on a case-by-case basis where there is a contract that is valid, and if the person is needed, then you will deal with it. If it isn't at that point in time, then you will deal with it. You will make the decision on a case-by-case basis. And as you recognize, there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of work that needs to happen with regard to changing out pipelines. There's a lot of capital expenditure work that needs to happen in WASA. And you can't take the money from both sides. So you have to try to manage over time, have discussions with the workers. We have been working with the members of the union and trying to get into new ways, shift systems and so forth, so that you could keep that organization's operating expenses tight, so as to allow you to take money and use in other forms. That's all.
Mr. Minister, what is the ratio between permanent employees and contracted employees at WASA?
How much permanent, how much contract?
Total current operating at WASA is now about 4,922 workers, all right? And do you want me to go down and give you an idea, daily paid?
No,
monthly
it's the
paid.
split between
So you
contracted
have-
and permanent.
So you have monthly paid permanent of 1,052. You have monthly paid temporary of 1,139. You have current operating monthly paid contract, casual, part-time trainees, contingent inside there, under the monthly paid about 825. You have daily paid, daily rated permanent, 120. You have daily paid temporary, 984. All right. And then you have daily rated workers, another category of worker that is casual, part-time, contingent, about 809. That comes up, if my math's correct, about 4,900.
Have you done an efficiency study, Mr. Minister, to see whether WASA needs these numbers of workers to carry out its function? And is that efficiency study what caused you to make this decision to cut the contract employment, as you have indicated is going to be cut? Because I cannot conclude otherwise that people are going to lose their jobs.
So the question is whether I've done an efficiency study.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think you don't need to go into a severe efficiency study. What we have been trying to do at WASA is to try to use the amount of staff that we have to help in fixing the system, the problems that we have out there with regard to reducing leaks and so forth. That being said, you're trying to do that as good as well as possible with regard to also managing your expenditure and keeping it tight. I mean, when you look and you try to benchmark WASA versus any other agent, all the agencies around, the number of workers in WASA, they do have a fair amount of workers. What we have decided to do was to use those workers to help to fix the problem. But while you're fixing the problem, you're also trying to rationalize and trying to increase the efficiency of the organization.
But you can't benchmark WASA, Mr. Minister, against other agencies. You have to benchmark WASA against another water authority.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, when I benchmark WASA, it's not against other agencies, it's against other water authorities. But we have been utilizing the operations. The whole idea is to try to make WASA efficient as possible, whilst utilizing the staff that we have to deal with the existing problems. So it's a work in progress.
Member for Carinese.
Yeah. Madam Chair, line item 09, the rent lease vehicle equipment of approximately 60 to 70 million. Minister, have you done a business plan to see whether that is cost effective, or whether the alternate, whether you purchase your own equipment and vehicles, whether that will reduce the cost of 60 to 70 million annually? Has there ever been a business plan? Line item 09, in terms of rental and lease of vehicles and equipment.
Again,
have you ever considered it? Or
yes, I mean, WASA, and you will see there's a particular line that we are looking down where we are looking to purchase some backhoes and purchase some equipment to be able to execute some of our repairs in our leak programs. You will, to the idea of purchasing all this equipment, then you have running costs. You have a tremendous amount of maintenance costs. You have to put systems and procedures in place to ensure. I'm not too sure that being able to run its own fleet at WASA would be cost effective in being able to have those equipment operating. And therefore, over time, the organization has used this model. And although I feel we could improve in some areas in buying some equipment, I feel this model of leasing some equipment is the most cost-effective model to use.
Madam Chair, just as I'm here, could you allow me to ask on 16, contract employment? you have a revised estimate of 370 million on contract employment in 2019. And of course, you have over 306 million in 2020. The contract employment here, is that included in the 4,922 workers you just mentioned a while ago in terms of your total amount? Because you said monthly contract workers about 825.
The answer is yes, yes. Those workers, that payment there is included in the 4,009.
So this pays for the monthly contract?
Yes.
All right, okay.
Honours West.
Thank you. Madam Chair, line item 22, short-term employment. There was an allocation in 2019, the estimates of 600,000. It has increased in 2020 to 5.870 million, an increase of that amount. What is the nature of this short-term employment, and what is generating this employment, the necessity for this employment in 2020?
Well, this particular line item was used to really, I mean, you know, we have been having a lot of problems in our call center. There's been a lot of people making a lot of complaints about calling into the center, and takes a lot of time to actually make your required calls. And therefore, we went around expanding that particular center, bringing in about 25 to 30 young people to try to improve the efficiency of that particular call center. And that's where that has worked to some extent. It is not perfect. And that's where that short-term employment is handled in that particular area.
Just to follow up, Madam Chair, Honorable Minister, you know that there is nothing short-term in WASA. If you have a call center, then they will eventually, after 2 years, become permanent employees in accordance with the industrial relations plan. Have you considered the outsourcing of the call center?
Yes, it is an evaluation. It is something. Let me also add, in that particular, we also took in some trainees. So that figure is also dealing with some trainees there. But the decision we have looked at that. It was outsourced before. We brought it back again inside. And there's a back and forth conversation on whether it should be back, whether it should be outsourced. It's an evaluation that is presently underway with regard to making some type of decision. But we felt that we did see some improvement. It's a very expensive proposition with regard to outsourcing, and it's one that we always have to weigh in WASA. How do we take money if we go into it in recurrent expenditure, all right, versus the limited funds that we have in using for capital expenditure? Okay. So it might work, it might be a little bit more efficient, I agree with that, but it is a very expensive proposition.
Member for Couva South.
Chair, my colleague from Chaguanas West.
Member for Mutumatsinilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have three line items. The first one I want to ask on Honorable Minister is on line item 16, contract employment. It really deals with all the employment, huh? And I'm asking our Minister, why is it that the government is of the opinion that when you reduce staff that there will be greater efficiency in the service? It just doesn't add up. And how really would the efficiency of the ministry be guaranteed when you are reducing staff? That's the first one.
Well, again, you know, first to begin, as I said before, we are constantly evaluating and utilizing the amount. We are convinced that the figure that we have estimated as 306, bearing in mind also, based on the efficiencies that we're doing, and bearing in mind also some of the estimates for 307, 370 million, we still have some of that allocation that we will then be able to pay. We are convinced that we should be able to run the organization fairly from a contract employee perspective on the 306 million. Without, yes, there are some employees whose contracts that we feel as part of the efficiency process that we no longer need. But by and large, we are not reducing any massive reductions of staff. And we think, therefore, that we will be able to utilize the existing, to have the staff, most of the staff that we need to run the organization effectively.
On line item 68, Honorable Minister, that's on page 190. It's parts of goods and services.
Under?
Line item 68, page 190.
Yes.
I see there was an increase for water trucking. Is this for arrears? Or is this to supplement the much-needed water supply?
Well, again, you know, we are expecting, and we have been talking about it a lot, we are expecting based on where our dams are, we feel we needed to plan in anticipation of our dry season next year, of us not having the type of levels starting the year where we want to be.
So this does not include arrears?
No, this is not arrears. This is just an anticipation. This increase for 2020 is basically, the major part of this is really to deal with some of our anticipation in increasing water trucking as part of our contingency going forward.
Minister, there are two areas, huge areas in my constituency that depend on water trucking.
Mm-hmm.
And if simply you would put the booster in Tamina Hill, which requires, it is a booster, but it requires three-phase electricity, this would alleviate the need for water trucking. And the same would apply for the area of Fishing Pond and Kaiwal.
Mm-hmm.
If simply you continue the pipeline project, it would alleviate this and it would also bring in income for the public utilities. So I don't understand, in taking all these monies to put into water trucking and applying when you could simply resolve the situation by putting in certain simple mechanisms in place. And the last item I would like to raise is on line item 69. If the Honorable Minister could indicate within my constituency any of the road reinstatements that you plan to undertake, please.
Well, again, I don't have this by constituency by constituency. But as you see, we do have some money allocated for road reinstatement.
If when you have the staff could probably provide.
But again, it is we as the minister, and I'm sure WASA will love to be able to have a bigger allocation there to reinstate all the roads when they are fixed with regard to the leaks. It is not something that is possible at this point in time because we have a budget that we are working with. And therefore, we have to fix the leaks. We have done a good job in bringing the leaks down to the present level. And I agree, we would like to have more money in reinstatement. But if we have the money in reinstatement, right, then we will have to then cut the money from other areas. So it is not because we don't want to. It is a challenge of managing your limited resources and trying to utilize them as effectively as you can.
I do agree, Minister, and there's an area in Komoto that is really, really affected because of a leak, and the road is really in a deplorable condition. And that is one of the roads I would be hoping that you would be able to address, and that's why I'm asking. Thank you.
Well, as you know, you communicate with me a lot, including a lot of the members, and I'm sure if you send it to me, we will definitely take a look at it, as I do with all requests that comes forward.
Member for Tabaki.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, I'm on goods and services, and I'm still looking at number 9, rent lease of vehicles and equipment. Now, yes, you are going down by $6.6 million for this year, but you still have $63.4 million that you're going to be spending on vehicles and equipment lease. But side by side with that, you have 01, you have $52 million you are spending in traveling and subsistence. Now, I want to do a little calculation to really establish how many vehicles are you leasing. Let's take a popular vehicle that you have to use to repair roads, repair leaks, which is a backhoe. If you take a backhoe on the market now, backhoes are being rented for between $1,600 and $1,800 a day. which means that $63,401,000 will give you 35,000 days. 35,000 days at $1,800. I give you the higher amount. If you use 250 days per year, means to say that that is an equivalent of 140 backhoes that you will have available with the 63 million. My question is this: what kind of equipment are you renting for this $63 million between, let's say, vehicles that people drive and come to work or what have you, or supervisors use, and productive equipment, those used actually in the repairs, like trucks, backhoes, mini excavators, 320, and so on? What kind of equipment are you using? Because I'm concerned that the $51.9 million in traveling and subsistence, people are also collecting that within the organization. So we are looking really at about $122 million between traveling and subsistence and the lease of equipment. Yeah, I know it's two separate. But you see, if it is that you are leasing vehicles and then paying people also a traveling allowance to use their own vehicles, but then they are using vehicles that you are leasing, then that is not proper management.
No, totally no. No, I mean,
all right, so I come back to my original question. What is the list of vehicles that you have leased out for this $63 million, which represents, in my view, if you use only backhoes as an example, 35,000 days for the year, or 140 backhoes?
We start. You're talking about excavators, trucks, you're talking about backhoes, you're talking about dump trucks, you're talking about lighted plants, you're talking about trash pumps. You're talking about a number of different equipments that you need to lease, to fix, to help, to repair the high number of leaks that we also have. I mean, if you are talking, remember I've given the figures before, you're talking about an organization that deals with anything like about 100 to 150 leaks a day. So if you are looking at 100 to 150 leaks a day in the organization, and you're talking about what you talked about, rented equipment, you understand the amount of equipment that is required to mobilize those things. So when you are moving your leaks from 3,000 down to 1,000, you get an idea of the volume that we are talking about with regard to leaks. So as I said, that's why sometimes I'm high in praise with WASA, because, and sometimes, of course, I sympathize with the population who continues to see leaks and say, well, why is it not being fixed? Because there's a lot of leaks that are being fixed, but there is still much more work to do. So this particular item is dealing with rental of equipment for the running of the organization. If there is a main that is burst, that you need big
I just want to
emergency
get a
work.
list of the equipment that you rent.
So you would like to get a list of the
I
types
would
of
like.
equipment? Sure,
Yeah.
I could provide that
And
for you.
fine, because I put that against number 28, $100 million in other contracted services, which I also believe is contracts being given out to repair leaks also. So you see, you understand why I'm concerned now about the amount of money leased vehicles as well as the contracted services.
Yes, I hear you.
That's all, Mr. Minister. Thank you.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Madam Chair, line item 28, other contracted services. Honorable Minister, I see that you have an increase from the 2019 estimate of 80 billion to 100 million plus, an increase of $20.3 million. What are these contracted services for, and what is the impact of this increase?
The 20.4 million increase in other contracted services is primarily as a result of increased expenditure in the repairs and maintenance to the authorities' plants and pipelines, right? We're looking at some of the improvements that we have scheduled is the Arena Dam, Valsain Waterworks, Beetham Wastewater Treatment Plant, Holick Reservoir, Carine Arena Water Treatment Plant, Richmond Water Treatment Plant in Tobago, North Oropouche Water Treatment Plant. So those are the types of the jobs that are being done and that will take care of this increased and take care of the expenditure for 2020. And again, we are looking at upgrading the infrastructure and trying to get those work done as early as possible so as to try to increase the reliability of water. to the citizens.
So notwithstanding your claim that the utilizing as much as is possible of the water and sewage employees, there are some jobs that you have to contract out.
Yes, yes, of course. I mean, we have to, the running of WASA requires a certain amount of contracting out some, and we have cut that back tremendously. This figure was a lot more, and it has probably come back. It has been coming down by about 100 to 200 million over the period, as we try to do some more work internally with the WASA employees. All right. So there is a combination of using in-house staff and external staff. And as I said, this is one of the areas that we've been focusing on in actually reducing, in using less contract services and using more of the internal staff.
Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, line item 43, Security Services, an increase of $9 million for 2020. But I understand there's a huge outstanding security services bill in arrears. Could you state what is to date, what is that arrears, or is that arrears catered for in this line item?
No, that arrears is not catered for in this line item. This line item, this 9.2 increase is due largely to increased security requirements at a number of our WASA facilities. As you would recognize, water is a very important product. Security is something that we have been beefing up in ensuring. So we have had incidents of theft and vandalism at a number of our locations. And the locations requiring manning that we use this money for is Clark Road, Pinal, El Socorro Waterworks, Guanapo Water Treatment, Tucker Valley Booster. I mean, I have a list of all that is required and the new ones that we are adding as we try to increase security at services at these strategic locations of WASA, because we have been getting increased vandalism and increased vandalism.
But Minister, the arrears that is outstanding in the security services line item, which you said is outstanding. Could you state how much is outstanding and where that amount will be allocated?
Well, if you would like me to, and you were asking about a particular security company that was not paid, if you give me that question, I will be able to advise what is the extent of that arrears.
I understand there's several, not only one, several security companies that are owed arrears.
Well, you know, again, WASA continues to be, I mean, the paying of services and the paying of those institutions, security companies are not the only ones that are in arrears. But yes, they do have, and if you like me to provide you a list of the companies that are in arrears with regard to security services, I will provide.
Member for Shagona, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, may I return to line item 69? This seems to be a vexatious issue.
69.
With many persons, the road reinstatement.
Yes.
And therefore, I have a few matters I'd just like to ask you. First of all, this appears to be vexatious for road users because when it is not properly done, the reinstatement, it causes a lot of unnecessary traffic jam. Could you tell us what is the protocol, if you have one existing, for when people get connections or have to pay for connections in terms of road reinstatement? That's my first question. The second question is, are you satisfied, maybe it's a rhetorical question, with the allocation? And with respect to the road reinstatement, are you also satisfied with respect to the quality of the road reinstatement, which seems to disintegrate very quickly after certain weather conditions? So the protocol, really?
The protocol with regard to when somebody gets a connection, who pays for the reinstatement of the particular connection? What's that? I'll need to get, the actual protocol as it relates to that, I could probably get back to you. I don't, and I can't seem to get an appropriate answer.
And again, when
The reality of road, what I could say with regard to road reinstatement, I understand that has been an issue. A big part of that issue really has come about because, to an extent, WASA is a victim of some of the improvement in the work that it has done in moving the leaks from 3,000, close to 4,000 to 1,000. So they have done a good job. If you do the math, it's not just 2,000, because if you have 150 leaks a day and you are doing those leaks and still reducing the number, so there have been a heightened awareness and trying to deal with the leaks in a lot more responsive manner. As a result of that, there's been a lot of reinstatement work that needs to be done. And therefore, the allocations, of course, we would like to get more, to be able to do more. At this point in time, however, we are struggling to try to deal with what we have. And if you decide to get more here, where are you going to take it from? So it is something that we are working on. It is something that we are trying to stretch as much as possible to try to see how we could improve, because I've heard the cries of a number of individuals. But again, the focus over the last year has really been on trying to attack the number of leaks. We want to bring the number of leaks. We have brought the leaks in South, the Central and South Trinidad is actually at one time went below 100 leaks on record. I think they're back up to about 120. So South and Central, I think we have broken the back of it, and we have a lot of those leaks. That is not saying that there isn't leaks that are showing up, right? But there's been a lot of work. The northwest of Trinidad is where we have a big problem, and we have to focus there because there are about 800 leaks, 750 leaks in that area alone. So there's been a problem. I've acknowledged that, and we are, whether this will work, whether this will solve this allocation of 20 million, I don't think it will rectify all the reinstatement that needs to happen, but we'll try as much as possible to get as much done with the resources that have been allocated to us.
Thank you, Minister. Just a final question on road reinstatement. Are you satisfied with the level of liaison relationship between your ministry and the Ministry of Works? Because some of the constituency, you just wait for the Baba Green to roll, and then the WASA come and dig up.
There's a lot of jokes that have jokes that have been put
but
at
the question
WASA.
really is this: are you satisfied with the relationship in terms of that liaison?
Yes. Over the last year, we have done a lot of work in improving that relationship, and we have a protocol in place with regard to when roads are going to be resurfaced. There's a timeline that is given by the ministry, by the works, and we know where they are going. We monitor the roads, we fix the roads, we fix the leaks as best as possible. In some cases, however, it would be nice to change all the pipes, but money does not always permit you to be able to do that. So you try to fix the leaks as best as you can. We have a timeline that we leave the leaks before you start to fix the road. Unfortunately, sometimes when you bring that heavy equipment to actually fix the road, that heavy equipment also contributes. You put that heavy equipment and you're grading, and that heavy equipment on the road contributes sometimes to some leaks coming up. And that's why right after you pave the road, you end up with leaks. It's because there weren't any leaks before. But the heavy equipment on the road then facilitates pressure on the pipes, and that causes it to leak also.
Will the protocol say the period of time after which you make the connection, the road should be repaired? Because we have had instances of reports where, like in Woodland, for example, my colleague is indicating that over 3 months after the connection, road has not been reinstated. So if the protocol will say that, we'll be happy to.
Okay, I will get that information to you. I'm not 100% at this point in time of the actual protocol. But again, we have been trying as much as possible, and I agree. We have been trying as much as possible to meet customer demands. All right, we have been trying as much as possible, as I said, to fix the leaks. And therefore, the road reinstatement and the backup facilities associated is about money. And we don't always have the resources to be able to do that. So we could then decide, listen, I have to hold back on my connection because I know I don't have the money afterwards to reinstate it. But we have taken the decision, let's get the connection going, because I've been putting a drive in that area also to improve. This has been the lag, and hopefully we will try to use this money as best as we can to fix some of the problems.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, I've listened to you extensively on 68 and 69 with respect to water trucking and road reinstatement. Just for the records, and again, I heard you told one of my colleagues with respect to water trucking, you don't go by constituency and so on. I know of people, for example, with the shutdown of the desal plant recently, were waiting on 3 and 4 days to even get an acknowledgement from WASA when they called in to get a work, what they call ID number to get water. And up till today, they have not gotten any sort of relief from WASA. So I don't know what is the protocol or how they go about in terms of this truck-borne water supply. And additionally, this question of road reinstatement, and again, this issue of not going by constituency and so on. If you drive on the Calcutta number 1, 2, and 3 road, there's potholes there as a result of what WASA created for the last 3 and 4 years on the Balmain Main Road. Extensively, up till this morning, people call me because of the inconvenience. But people are contemplating a class action suit on WASA because of the amount of potholes and wear and tear on the vehicles, burst tires, you name it. That is the track record. And in addition to that, I mean, I don't want to tell you what the constituents W as the Minister for Water for None, but this is the reality, and we are continuing to plead and beg when we cannot get what we would call equality of treatment in terms of road reinstatement and water trucking. That is the reality. You know?
Well, again, I mean, I'm not sure. One thing I could assure you is that WASA does not discriminate as to where they have lines or roads that they need to be reinstated. I think if you mentioned some roads there, and I'm sure if you go, I could go up the east-west corridor, I could go in the west, and I could call a number of roads that are like that. We do have a challenge because we have challenges at WASA, which we are attempting to deal with. We have challenges that the previous that we inherited, and I'm sure there were challenges that other ministers also inherited in dealing. Fixing WASA is a work in progress. I think we have been able to make some dramatic improvements in certain areas, but this whole idea of road reinstatement is a challenge, but it's about resources. It's about money. It's about how much money you have to put in that particular area and trying to use that money as best as you can. At this point in time, the allocation that we have, 20 million, we will attempt to use it as effectively as possible. With regard to water trucking, again, you heard me talking about the improvements that we have done so far in the call center because we have had problems there. It has gotten better. Based on what you are saying, I might have to look at expanding it even more because I don't like those levels of service that you are speaking about. And I would like when people calling that they're able to get water. Hence the reason why we are putting a little bit more money in that particular allocation, because not because we feel this is a permanent solution, but in recognition of what people have been saying and what we intend to happen next year, we have decided to beef up that particular area.
West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that, Honorable Minister, perhaps whilst you're dealing with the whole question of leak repair and road restoration, we have inherited a situation from time immemorial in which there is no utility grid. All the pipelines generally fall under the roadways, so that therefore road reinstatement, pipeline repair is always going to be a problem with us until we reach the stage of a utility grid. What I have noticed in line item 68, and perhaps is an indicator of how the non-maintenance of the production plants of WASA is impacting upon water trucking positively. You had 8.9 million in 2018, 10 million in 2019, 16 million revised estimate in 2019, and projected 48 million in 2020, an increase of 32 million. So to a large extent, Minister, your tenure is being marked by a massive and significant increase in water trucking. The second issue I want to raise with you is under the question of road reinstatement, having said with respect to the utility grid and the need for that in the future, that a study was carried out by the then operations manager at WASA, Steve Joseph. And they pointed out the nature of the pipelines, the number of leaks per annum on each pipeline, and the need for the replacement. As a result of that, over 1,000 kilometers of pipeline, transmission pipelines, were replaced. And I want to suggest to you, notwithstanding the paucity of funding, that that is a program that you ought to return to in order to deal with this question, because the pipelines, when you repair them, they are very porous. They are going to break again, and that therefore you continuously have this problem.
All right, so members, if you just permit me, if we can just take a very short break, maybe, and be back here in the next 5 minutes. Okay? Yeah, and we'll start back with you. Okay? Thank you very much.